Hi guys, how are you? So today what I'm going to teach you how to do is make chicken pot pie. This is something that we can definitely make vegetarian, and I'll talk about some of the swaps. But step one is to start with a nice 10-inch skillet preheated, and we're going to use neutral oil. So this is because we're trying to get some browning on the chicken. If it's hot enough to brown your food, it's too hot for something like olive oil. So this is a better place for something like canola or avocado. We're getting our pan ripping hot, meaning that it is going to be hot enough to smoke our oil. And now I'm going to add some of this chicken. I chopped up a bit too much. We're really going for somewhere in the realm of 1 pound. Woo! And we're cooking. This would be a great place for a splatter screen. I don't have that today. All right, so some of you just jumped in. Hi, everybody. So we're making chicken pot pie today. I'm trying to do this in 30 minutes or less. So this is a modified recipe. No roast chicken first, nothing complicated like that. These are chicken thighs that I have in the pan. They've been chopped up, boneless and skinless chicken thighs. You can certainly use breast meat, but again, boneless and skinless here. And we're going to brown it. I'm not moving it. I am salting my food as I cook it. So a little bit of salt on top of the chicken. If you feel like adding pepper, that's totally up to you, but salt is not optional, guys. You don't want your food to taste seasoned just on the surface. You want it to taste salty all the way through. So you have to put it onto your food while it's cooking so that it has a chance to migrate in. Next up, I'm going to get started on some of our veg prep. I got an onion. I need a knife. This guy, good chef's knife. I'm only going to use about half of this onion. I'm cutting through the root end of my onion, setting that half aside. I'm going to take off, I keep demoing this over and over. This is the root end, this is the shoot end. I'm going to remove a little bit of the shoot. Makes it easier then to peel this back, get rid of anything that is tougher, that is kind of fibrous. We only want the juicy layers. If you get down to a papery layer, keep removing it. Using the tip of my knife, I'm going to make a series of cuts that go across the surface of this onion. And then another series of cuts. Until I have a nice diced onion. All of this can be saved as scrap for things like stock, but this diced onion is good to go. With our carrot, I want nice small pieces, trimming a little bit off of each end. Guess what, guys? I don't have a peeler. Just given the kitchen that I'm in. Don't worry about it. I'm cutting this in half, cutting this into quarters lengthwise. I'll show you what I mean. See how I took this carrot down into quarter-sized pieces, and now I'm going to cut across so that I get really small pieces. Notice I have not moved my chicken. I'm trying to build up some browning on one side of that chicken. Cutting this carrot nice and small will ensure that it cooks in less than 15 minutes in the oven, okay? Very important. If you do large pieces of carrot, this recipe doesn't cook for very long in the oven. I've modified it to make it kind of weeknight friendly. So you do need to kind of practice better knife skills than maybe you would with a traditional chicken pot pie recipe. All right, if you did not want to use chicken, let's say you're vegetarian or you just don't have it, mushrooms are a great alternative. You can definitely brown mushrooms instead of chicken. I even like to do a mushroom and butternut squash pot pie. I think that's a really lovely combination, especially in the winter. Okay, so we got onion and carrot chops, celery's up next. Again, I want this to cook in the right length of time, so I'm going to cut it lengthwise in that direction. This way I don't have giant pieces of celery that won't cook in time. So again, break this on down. If you have fresh herbs like thyme, that's great. My recipe includes it, the written version. I don't have it. Guess what? It's not the end of the world. We can make it work. Okay, got our veg prep done. Let's check out our chicken. Hopefully it's gotten nice and browned on one side. Oh yeah, I'll show you what I mean. We got some pieces that are getting a good amount of browning. Well, we don't want our chicken to cook all the way through at this step. In fact, if it cooks all the way through, you run the risk of it overcooking then in the oven, especially if you're using something like thighs. I'm sorry, breast. If I'm using thighs, which gives me a little bit more protection because they're a little bit fattier, a little bit richer, a little bit juicier. Hi guys. I don't know who that is from San Antonio, but I assume it's either somebody I went to high school with or somebody that does yoga with my mom, but I'm so glad that you guys are tuning in from all over the place. It makes me feel still connected, even though I am far away. Please let me know if you guys have requests. Some of you have been tuning in daily. This is something I'm trying to do Monday through Friday, every day at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I was a little late getting started today. Sorry, guys. Okay, so our chicken is browned on one side. I know it's not finished cooking. That's okay. I'm going to remove it. You could put it on a plate. I just happen to have this available. I'm going to remove it, transfer it, and I'm going to use my uncleaned skillet. I'm leaving my skillet dirty. Don't worry about it. To then begin sauteing the vegetables. Again, one of my favorite tools ever. Very cheap. It's called a bench scraper. Save your knives. No more scraping your knife against a cutting board to lift things off. Why do I care about that? It keeps my knife sharp if I don't do that. It also then prevents me from ever bending my knife out of plane. So this is a great use and abuse tool. This is something you want to protect. Okay, we got to get a little bit of salt in. Remember our rules. Anytime we add food to the pan, we season it. Because again, the salt can actually penetrate into the interior of that vegetable as well. I'm gonna get a little bit of pepper going. Pepper is optional, salt is not. All right. Oh, Michelle, how are you? Please chime in, guys, if you have any questions on how to modify this, because this is a recipe that's super friendly to modifications. As I mentioned before, we can make it vegetarian with mushrooms. We could use butternut squash. We could use a variety of different vegetables. I always choose something in the allium family. What I mean by that is like leeks, leeks, onions, garlic, something, shallot, anything in that area. And then I like using carrot and celery because that's just traditional. But there's no reason that you can't do a parsnip pot pie. There's no reason that you couldn't do something like celery root or even cabbage, okay? So there's a variety of vegetables that you can use and substitute. All right, look at how my pan sort of looks like it's getting destroyed. Can you guys see how brown that is? Don't worry, that's called fond. It is flavor. So what we've built up is some browning from the chicken, from the vegetables, and what happens to it is it actually browns the vegetables, browns those little particles that get stuck to the bottom of the pan, and they're full of what's called Maillard flavor. It's this like, think of like why a steak tastes good or why a grilled vegetable tastes good, that browned edge. And so we're building up that, and we're going to deglaze in just a little bit with our stock. But before we do that, because chicken pot pie always has that kind of thicker body that coats the back of the spoon, we need to singe with flour. Don't worry about the French term. All it means is we're going to sprinkle with flour. You don't have to speak French to cook, but you know, we love using lots of French terms. I'm gonna stir this to coat, and then next up, I'm gonna stir in my homemade chicken stock. You can use boxed, don't worry about it, not the end of the world. You can use vegetable stock. You could, in a pinch, use milk. I think it's kind of weird that there's recipes out there that use milk because I want more meaty flavor personally, but yo, you do you. Okay, 2 cups of stock going in. I'm going to scrape the bottom of the pan to dislodge all of that browned bit, that fond, remember? This is going to give it a nice, rich, umami, savory, meaty flavor, okay? If umami doesn't, sounds like French to you or Japanese, don't worry about it, you don't have to understand it. But it is adding savory flavor by using chicken stock and by deglazing that fond, i.e. by scraping the bottom of the pan that has all that brown schmutz on it and reincorporating it. Okay, so we're gonna let this come to a full boil, and then we're gonna talk about how to do the topping. I'm using self-rising flour. That's just because that's what we had at the grocery store, guys. I don't know if you've been running around with the problem of a lot of people are having trouble getting their hands on all-purpose. Self-rising flour has leavener in it, which means it has things like baking powder already in it, and it's actually already seasoned with salt. So if you're not using self-rising flour, you would use a combination of flour, baking powder, and salt. And again, I will post that in my final recipe. Turning this down because we're at a full boil. But self-rising flour will do. Again, my recipe is going to live over on celestible.com. We're adding cream. This is just to make it super easy to make this at home, okay? You can certainly have gone through the process of cutting flour and butter together and made the perfect biscuit topping. But you know what, guys? I just didn't have time for that because I'm trying to make this a 30-minute recipe. Okay, so in my case, just because I don't want to deal with too much sloshing, and I'm not sure about Clara's pans and like their oven safety, you can certainly build this all in the skillet. But I'm going to transfer the contents to this dish, this glass Pyrex dish. We're also going to include some frozen vegetable. This is supposed to be just peas. I don't have just peas. Whatever. It's green beans and peas. We'll make it work. I'm going to transfer the contents of this over to here. And then I'm going to top with my biscuit topping and transfer immediately to the oven. It's going to cook for about 15 minutes. Okay, with our biscuit topping, we need a spoon. I actually prefer 2 spoons because it's going to make it easy to scrape a little, drop all over. So we just want a couple biscuit pieces all over the surface here. You can certainly do more. I'm trying to, again, guys, make this sort of a family-friendly, weeknight-friendly recipe. I didn't want this to be all about the crust. If you do, you do you, okay? But I'm trying to make this somewhat more nutritionally valuable and not just about white flour. So if you wanted to make more of this biscuit topping, you could up to double the recipe. I was using 2/3 of a cup of flour here. All right, so we got our little biscuits sitting on the surface here. I'll show you what this looks like. And this is ready to go into the oven. I'm using a hot oven because all we're trying to do here is cook the biscuit and finish cooking the chicken all the way through. Remember, the chicken was almost done. It was brown, but it was maybe still a little bit raw in the center. So now 15 minutes at 400 degrees should do the trick. I'm gonna go ahead and post this recipe, as I mentioned, on celestible.com. Later today, I'll post a final picture so you can see what it looks like, but I don't think that you're gonna have a lot of fun watching me wait for this to bake. But if you have any questions, please chime in right now. Oh, hi, Ben, how are you doing? I'm gonna scroll back through and see if anybody asked anything. Awesome, okay. Well, again, hit me up with requests, things like that. I'm looking forward to tasting this and kind of showing you guys a final picture in just a little bit. Thanks so much for cooking with me.